I've been in some scary situations while Uber driving, but tonight's experience takes the cake for the scariest experience I've ever had while Uber driving. I picked up a young lady in the outskirts of Tampa. It was a long ride from the outskirts somewhere near Sun City Center all the way to South Tampa. As we're driving past the skyline, I point to the passenger at about 4 in the morning how beautiful the Tampa skyline is, and the passenger doesn't reply. She seemed to be in shock. Now, because it's late at night and she's a female passenger, a very young female passenger, I can understand that she might be afraid of me. So I usually don't talk too much to these passengers. So I didn't find it out of place that when I told her how beautiful the skyline was, she seemed to ignore me. Now, that would have been a red flag that something was really wrong. But so far, I hadn't noticed anything strange about this ride. I was listening to music, everything seemed to be normal. As I approached the residential neighborhood where I was going to drop her off, I told her what a nice ride it was and that I hoped she had a great day. This is when I realized things were really wrong because once again, she continued to ignore me. Now, after being a passenger for nearly 45 minutes, we've been in the car long enough to where if I tell her, I hope you have a great day, she should at least say thank you. But she didn't reply. So at this moment, I'm wondering exactly what's going on with my passenger. But when I pull up to the place where I'm supposed to drop her off, I look in the back seat and the female is having a panic attack. She's crying and she's in the fetal position with her feet on top of the back seat. She tells me she's scared, she doesn't know where she's at, and she doesn't know why I brought her here. Now at this point, I have two options. I can forcibly extract the passenger, or I can try to be reasonable, understanding, and try to help this person. Despite the fact that I didn't really trust her, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I was calming, reassuring. I told her, we're not just going to leave you here. We're going to find a place where you can be safe. I don't know why you ended up here, but let's just calm down. I assure you you're safe. If you don't feel safe with me, I can drop you off at a gas station. I can take you to a police station. I can call the cops right now. I want you to know that you're safe and that I'm not holding you captive in this vehicle. Now, here's where I have to decide whether this passenger is legitimately having a panic attack and needs help, or if this person is trying to set me up for a robbery. So I gotta walk on a thin line because this could be a distraction to rob me. Now, the person in the back seat is a female, and the account holder was a male at the house where I picked her up. Now, I witnessed her walk out of that door, and that lets me know the address where she originated. In other words, if they were going to victimize me, I would have an address where their people are at that I could use for a law enforcement report. So at this point, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt because after all, I did see her walk out the door of a house. Now, ending the ride and taking her to another destination, which is what she wanted, is against Uber policy. It's also extraordinarily dangerous because when you end the ride, Uber is no longer tracking neither one of you and you could easily be set up for a robbery. That scenario wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to risk my safety for her. Now, Uber has the option to start recording for your safety, but the moment you make a phone call, it stops recording. Here's the issue. The female is having me make constant phone calls to the person that booked the ride, which means that every single chance I get, I'm being disconnected from the recording app from Uber, which lets me know that perhaps these are seasoned people plotting a robbery. I asked her, where do you want to get to? What is your destination that you want to get to? Of course, she's not able to change the destination because she doesn't have the original phone to book the ride, and that person's not answering the phone to change the ride, so now I'm stuck with this person that refuses to get out of my car. If you're an Uber driver, you already know that this is starting to look like the setup for a robbery. As soon as I press record to start recording the incident, she has me call that number, which disconnects the recording app. Thus, she seems seasoned at knowing how to stop me from recording the incident. At this point, I'm fully convinced that I am now being staked out for a robbery. And the scariest thing is if they're going to rob me and I know where I picked her up, the house that she walked out of, these people may have really bad intentions for me. They don't seem to be covering their tracks very well. Now keep in mind that this girl is hysterical. She's balled up in a fetal position. She's shaking, she's crying, and I have a feeling that she's about to do something that she's too afraid to do. It felt like to me that they grabbed this girl and sent her on a crash test dummy mission, and now she's afraid to go through with whatever she was supposed to do, which was hold me there and perhaps try to get me to go to another destination with the Uber app off, something that I wasn't going to do. So when I refused to actually go where she wanted me to go, which by the way was very unclear, she wanted me to end the ride and then take her somewhere, but she didn't know where that somewhere was. So I start running through the options that will work for her. I tell her, look, I can take you to a police station. I can drop you off at a busy shopping center. You can walk away right now, or I can call the police. I'm not taking you to a destination with the app turned off because it's not safe for me to do that. This is what she was trying to get me to do. So at this point, I decided that there was no talking to this female. She was now erratic, screaming, crying, and she was in a fetal position in a corner of the truck. It seemed like she was a trapped cat and had no other options. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking this girl is armed and she's about to do something completely crazy. So the whole time I'm trying to talk to her calmly, I'm reassuring, I'm letting her, hey, no, we're gonna do this the right way, you're safe, I'm giving you all the options in the world. But no, I'm not just gonna start randomly driving you to a destination if you don't know where you're going. You're not gonna get control of this situation like that. Finally, at 4:24 a.m., I decide to dial 911 because every time I try to turn on the recording app, she has me call this person, which then drops the recording app, which means I'm not even able to record what's going on inside my vehicle because she's getting me to call this person, making the call drop. When I dialed 911, she instantly stopped crying. She came forward, launched towards the front of the vehicle, and tried to snatch my phone. Now keep in mind, I'm live right now with a 911 operator as she is trying to take my phone from me forcibly. The person on the police line is trying to get me to tell them the address. Now keep in mind, I don't know where I'm at. There's a street sign in front of me, but I can't read it. It's too dark. And on top of that, I got somebody in the back seat trying to fight with me. So I realized that I couldn't tell the police officer my location because I didn't know my location. To get my location through the Uber app, I would have to go into the phone and look at it. And that isn't possible because now I'm talking on the phone and I got somebody in the back seat trying to fight with me. It felt like an eternity to me. But perhaps maybe 20 seconds into this 911 phone call, she runs out the door. She opens the door and leaves. After forcibly trying to take my phone from me, she wasn't able to. She then decided to leave. At this moment, you can see I start moving forward. She didn't run, but she just got out of the car. She ran for a little bit and then she's walking now. So now I'm thinking I'm still being staged for a robbery. So I'm actually going to flip back around the way I came instead of driving this way, which is the way out. Now, you're going to see the female walking down the sidewalk, and you can't really identify her face because it's too dark and all that, so I'm going to show you the person. She's walking away, so this is where I was supposed to drop her off. You can see the puddle on the road from my air conditioner. I read the street sign name, and I'm telling it to law enforcement, and law enforcement's telling me that they don't know where I'm at. So I had to move to another block to get another intersection in order to tell law enforcement where I'm at. So now I'm explaining, hey, I had this passenger was started screaming, refused to get out of the vehicle. You'll see that I'll pass her up ahead. She's walking right there. You can see her walking, and she walked away from the place after all, she walked away. But I'm thinking, the whole time she's hysterical, she's crying, she's acting like she's a victim, she's in a corner with her feet up on top of the seat, she's acting like I'm going to hurt her. But the moment that I dial 911, that's the moment that this young lady tried to snatch my phone and ran out of the vehicle. At this point right here, I'm finally able to tell law enforcement exactly what intersection I'm at. and they ask me if they want to send a police officer out. And I tell her, well, I'm in my vehicle, she's out of my vehicle, I'm safe. I didn't call the cops for my safety, I called it for her safety. And she ran out of the vehicle as soon as I dialed 911. But she did try to snatch my phone, so now she wants to know if I want to press charges. And I told her, I'm not going to sit here and wait for the cops in this neighborhood. It's kind of South Tampa, and there's one road in and out of this entire area. So it's very strategic if you're trying to hurt somebody to put them there, if you think about it. Because after all, there's only one way in and out. And if somebody wants to chase you or follow you, they're able to do it easily. Because again, it's South Tampa. It's a peninsula. There's only one way in, one way out. So I didn't want to stick around this neighborhood. I wanted to get out of there. And this whole time, I have another passenger waiting for me that I picked up at this hotel right here. So now I had this passenger who I'm explaining to them why I'm 15 minutes late to their pickup. And he's like, man, I saw you sitting in this neighborhood for 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, I was dealing with this situation. I showed them the phone. I'm like, look, I was on the phone with the cops. I'm so sorry this happened. My GoPro battery also died, so when I stopped at the hotel, I changed my battery on the GoPro, and now I'm with this passenger who's going to the airport, and this is normal from a hotel to the airport. This is pretty straightforward of a ride. I'm just telling the guy, like, hey, man, I'm so sorry. I'm pretty much running on pure adrenaline right now because of the scenario that I just went through, and why not press charges? Well, I got out of there safe, and that's what mattered to me. And as far as this female, she acted like the victim. She was crying and pretending like she was scared. But the moment that I called the cops, she tried to steal my phone and run away. Could she have had warrants? Was she staging me for a robbery? Now, if she was staging me for a robbery, there's a few very concerning situations. I literally saw the house that she came out of. So if you're going to do a robbery, that wouldn't be the way you would go about getting picked up. Now, there's another possibility in this scenario, which is very possible, likely, and even before I got to the situation, this is what I thought was going on. A lot of times, the guy will grab a girl, and as soon as he's hit it, he quits it. He's calling her Uber, and she's got to leave. Many times, when the guys are done with the girl, they'll even send her on a wild goose chase and just send the Uber somewhere. Just take her out of here. The whole thing happened in South Tampa by Ruskin and Sun City Central. I'll drop her off in Tampa and she can walk away. It's possible that this person, for some reason or another, was done with this female and was just sending her home. That's what it looked like was going on inside the house where she got picked up at. And there's a few reasons why. And this is a very concerning detail. If you're an Uber driver, pay attention. When you're picking up somebody late at night and they take a very long time to get out, chances are there's some scenario happening inside that house, like somebody trying to force somebody to get into an Uber they don't want to get into. This is a red flag late at night, and waiting 5 minutes when I picked her up was already a red flag that something was wrong. It is possible that this individual was trying to get this girl to just go on this wild Uber ride that she wasn't prepared for. He was getting rid of her. He finished with her, and now she needs to be discarded, so he's sending her on an Uber ride to Tampa. However, if this girl really just finished getting run through like that, why would she be afraid of me calling the cops and just putting her somewhere safe for the moment? Why would you want to be in a car with a stranger you don't know if you're already having a panic attack? Why would this female refuse to go with law enforcement? And why would she try to stop me from talking to law enforcement? Could she have been a minor and the person she was with was older? I don't know exactly what the scenario was. There was definitely something very scary and very weird going on. I got two ideas of what could have happened here. Idea number one is that this female got ran through and the dude put her on an Uber to nowhere. And she kind of knew she was going somewhere, but she didn't know where she was going. And maybe she's not from the area, and now she's in a city she's not familiar with. And now she's in this Uber, and she has a panic attack. Understandable. I took it as that. I handled it as maybe this girl's just having a panic attack. Somebody sent her on this wild Uber ride to nowhere, and now she's scared. But if you're scared, why would you launch at me and try to take my phone from me when I called law enforcement? Now, theory number two is that they were trying to have me robbed. And in that scenario, there's a few details that are very, very scary for me. For one, if you're going to rob me, why would you have the person that I'm picking up walk out of a house? That lets me know that perhaps they weren't even worried about evidence. They weren't worried about my testimony, which would make me think that perhaps they were going to do something very bad to me where they didn't even care about my testimony. I mean, think about it. If you're not worried about the statement of the victim, you're going to make the victim disappear. Now, this girl was so hysterical that something tells me that they sent this girl on a wild mission and she got cold feet. Perhaps the way I treated her nicely and calm and reassuring made her emotions feel like she couldn't go through with it. It's possible that this girl was getting ran through because of the way she was scantily clothed. It was late at night. Everything seemed some dude was just running through her and dropped her off. I don't discard that as a possibility. But if that was the case, there's a few details that still don't add up. Namely, the detail that doesn't add up the most to me is why would she launch at me to take the phone away from me? And why would she change her complexion instantly the moment that I called the cops? And again, I'm not calling the cops to have her arrested. I'm calling the cops to help her go somewhere safe because she's having a panic attack in the back of a stranger's car, and I don't want her to feel scared and vulnerable. At the end of the day, what's disheartening and concerning about the situation to me when I look back on it is the detail that this girl was absolutely hysterical and then instantly she flipped when the cops were involved. It makes me think that perhaps I was being staged to get robbed. They wanted me to turn off the ride. The moment that I turned off the ride, I'm no longer able to record through Uber. I'm no longer being tracked through Uber. Now she has the ability to control where I'm going, and then I would have got robbed. And I do believe, seriously, that there's a potential that these individuals were planning to rob me because everything else would indicate that perhaps I disrupted their plans. For one, they noticed that I had a GoPro camera in the front of the vehicle. This could have been a question mark for them. Second, I calmly and patiently waited with the person for nearly 10 minutes at this location. I didn't get angry at her. I was calming, reassuring. And finally, when I called the cops, these were all variables that I put into the equation that could have got in the way of whatever their plan was. I never gave them control of the situation. If perhaps I had given her control of the situation, she wanted me to drive to another city. Now think about this. You've been in this Uber ride with me for almost an hour, 40 some minutes. And now you've wasted 10 more minutes by sitting in the car. So we've been together now for over an hour. You're telling me that you sit in the back of an Uber for nearly an hour and you are just now figuring out that this isn't where you're going to go and that you don't know where you're going to go. During the whole time in the Uber ride, she didn't start conversation. She seemed to just kind of ignore me the whole time. Why, when she felt comfortable with me, she didn't explain to me, hey, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where we're at. I don't know, why not when we were in the heart of Tampa, passing large business centers and areas that were more busy, didn't she speak up then? Why did she wait until we're in this dead-end residential neighborhood at the end of a peninsula? None of this adds up. What can we learn from this situation? If you're an Uber driver, pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. If the person asks you to call the number that booked the ride, it will disconnect your ability to record what's happening. There's no reason for you to have to call the number that booked the ride because that number should belong to the person that's in your back seat. It shouldn't be somebody else sending a person through Uber and the person in the back seat doesn't have the ability to control where they're going. Usually, when the person in the back seat has somebody else coordinating the ride, they know where they're going. So this is a red flag if you're an Uber driver. The moment that you call the passenger, it's going to disconnect your recording ability. So perhaps this female, by having me call the number, was really just trying to turn off my ability to record the safety feature, which is one of the biggest barriers you have to protect yourself and for your story to be heard through Uber or through law enforcement. So now, think very carefully if you're an Uber driver. The moment that you call that number, it's going to disconnect your ability to record what's happening in the vehicle. If this happens to you and you're an Uber driver, this is a red flag. You need to be extraordinarily careful. Number two, if the person refuses to talk to you, have conversation with you, you may want to stop somewhere well lit and try to understand if that person's okay. Ask them if they need medical attention. Are they okay? Because for some reason, if you're stuck on a ride with somebody for an hour, there's no reason for the person to start ignoring you. The person needs to have communication. If they choose out of their own ignorance that they don't want to talk to you, even then it may be a good idea to end the ride, because after all, communication is essential for their safety. And if they're not communicating, you perhaps are not able to render them safety if needed. This is a red flag, and I've told you guys on previous videos that every time I've had a passenger that turns into a scary situation, it usually revolves around the notion of at some point or another, the person refuses to communicate with you. That is a red flag that something dangerous is about to happen. You might remember in earlier Uber videos, I mentioned that if a passenger refused to talk to me, I would instantly end the ride. And this should have been a red flag for me. But again, she's a young female, late at night, scantily clothed. And obviously, seemed to be like what happened is that she got ran through. So in that circumstance, it's very uncomfortable for the driver to try to engage the passenger. And sometimes by not engaging them, you're respecting their privacy and their space, but all that also makes you more vulnerable. If you have a passenger that refuses to communicate, you need to address that immediately. Take control of the situation before they get to control where you're going to be next. This is the first time that I've ever had to dial 911 because of a passenger in the back seat. I've had situations that were scary and violent, and I've opted not to do it. In this case, because I loomingly saw the threat of a potential robbery, because there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red flags, I decided to call the law enforcement, not because I was afraid of the passenger, but with the pretext of it's for the passenger's safety, because she's having a panic attack and she's scared. And well, her whole entire demeanor changed. It went from crying and screaming for help to trying to steal my phone. Obviously, this wasn't a victim. It was an absolute wolf in sheep's covering. And that makes me wonder what the real intentions were. In the back of my mind, I can't stop thinking about the potential that these people were really going to rob me, because after all, this passenger went from a sheep to a wolf instantly the moment law enforcement became involved, making me think that this person was trying to play the victim card, helpless, victimless woman, late at night victim woman, but in reality, they were planning to hit a lick. If they were planning to hit a lick, it's interesting that the address that I picked them up at matches up to a real name through the property appraiser, which matches up to real social media profiles, which even say where the people work. So that doesn't add up. Again, there's just too many loose ends. I don't believe somebody would just obviously hit a robbery with so many links tracing back to the address and the people. Everything links back together. There's enough evidence to where you could prosecute these people. I already know who the person is. I know her social media. Everything's on the internet. Everything links back up to the addresses and the names from the property where I picked her up. So it doesn't seem like it'd be a robbery, because if it's a robbery, why would you do it from the front door of your own house? There's a lot of question marks here about their intentions. Could this have just been a female that was going through her emotions? Perhaps she was under the influence of a substance and she didn't know what to do and she just acted crazy. That's possible. But there's so many things that this female did that would make me think she was about to rob me, that it literally put her life in danger. The moment that she launched at me to take my phone as I'm on emergency services could have been a fatal moment for her. Luckily, I opted for peace and long suffering with this person and not ending her situation. Because if I'm on 911 trying to ask for help from law enforcement and I'm being attacked by somebody who refuses to leave my vehicle, definitely she put herself in a very dangerous situation. And as a female, to launch at a male like that makes me think that perhaps she was armed and perhaps she got cold feet about doing what she was going to do. The fact that I was easily able to track back all this information to the people and find out who they were makes me think that perhaps they were thinking that I wasn't going to be around to tell the story anyway, so what would it matter what I knew? All this is very concerning. I don't know what their intentions were, and the purpose of today's video is to educate the public and other Uber drivers on the types of situations you can run into and the types of red flags that as an Uber driver will put you in a very precarious situation. So remember, if you're an Uber driver, to at least at the start, middle, and towards the end of your ride to briefly communicate with your passenger. Ask them if the temperature's fine. Are you comfortable? Do you need anything? Are we almost there? It's just small little confirmations, and keep the line of communication open. If the line of communication deteriorates between you and your passenger, chances are something is about to go wrong. And remember that if you call the number that booked the ride while you're in the ride, you're now not able to record what's happening inside the vehicle, and that leaves you extraordinarily vulnerable. This was definitely the scariest situation I've ever been in as an Uber driver, and I do believe in this situation, I think there's a 20% chance that the person in the back seat was armed and they weren't concerned about me being able to be a witness about the details of the case. In other words, I think if they had had their way, I wouldn't have been around to tell the story. I give it a 20% chance that that's a possible scenario. You, based on the facts of this situation, do you think that this person was just erratical, perhaps scared and frightened? Or do you believe that this person literally was planning to take me out of business? Personally, I feel like I averted death narrowly. I've never been so thankful to walk out of a situation, because to me, it seemed like these people were planning to rob me. And not only were they planning to rob me, I think they had no intentions of keeping me around as a witness, because they left way too many loose ends with their plan. They may believe that they're smart and agile and they figured out a way to cheat the system and rob an Uber driver. But if that was the case, I was definitely able to outsmart them. And a few evasive maneuvers on my part, calm thinking, and of course, being long-suffering saved me from possibly being victimized. I do believe that if I had been aggressive with this female and she was armed, my luck would have ran out. I wouldn't have had a chance to even have a reaction. I do believe that perhaps this female was sent on this dummy mission to try to take my car from me and rob me, but they made a miscalculation. And that miscalculation was that this girl got cold feet and she was scared to go through with whatever she was going to do. The fact that I became very kind and patient and long-suffering towards this female and worked with her through this situation could have saved my life. I do believe that if I had tried to aggressively extract her from the vehicle, she would have, out of fear, reacted violently, and that could have been the end of my life. Uber driving is very scary, and when you avert situations like this, you never really understand what happened. Was this female just frightened and irrational, or was she really planning to rob me? I guess I'll never know the answer, but I did learn a few things about how to keep myself safer in the future that I'm going to implement with future drivers. If you are a passenger on Uber, keep in mind that your drivers go through situations like this all the time, and if they're talking to you, they may not be trying to be creepy. They may just be trying to make sure that you're level-headed, because most of the time I've noticed that when people are about to pull something sketchy like this, the first thing they want to do is cut the line of communication. I was able to put a complete stop and end to this situation simply by dialing 911. The threat of law enforcement made this girl leave, which makes me think she could have had warrants or she was armed, and the notion of law enforcement showing up with her being armed or with illegal substances, I don't know what she had going on, but it was enough to deter her from continuing her fake lamb in sheep's covering act. I'm thankful to be here today to tell you this story. I've been in a lot of scary situations while Uber driving, and I believe that this one had the most potential to end badly.